Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Maldonado. This week in math, we're going to be looking at division with decimals. So I found a few problems online with Ready Math, and we're going to work through some together as practice that will help you with your lesson this week. So we're going to start with question number 2. So the first thing I want to do is I want to read and think about the problem and what it's asking me to find out. Gabriel has a stack of nickels that is 72 inches tall, 72 hundredths inches tall. The thickness of a nickel is 8/100 of an inch. How many nickels does Gabriel have? Show your work. All right. So what I do know in this problem is that the total height of the nickels is 72 hundredths inch tall. So I know it's less than a whole, and altogether it's 72 hundredths of an inch. I also know that the thickness of a nickel is 8/100 of an inch. So 1 nickel is 8/100. How many nickels does Gabriel have? Show your work. All right, so I need to figure out in this problem how many nickels, with each one being 8/100 of an inch, can give me a total of 72 hundredths of an inch. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to represent it using an equation. So I know that the total is going to be 72 hundredths. Each one is going to be 8/100 of an inch. So I need to know how many nickels would it take me to get to that total. So with division, just a reminder, the number that I'm starting with and dividing, this is called my dividend. This number here is called my divisor. Does anyone remember what we called the answer to division? The quotient. So I need to figure out what the quotient would be. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set up my division. So I'm going to use a bracket, and I'm going to put my dividend inside. 72 hundredths. My divisor goes on the outside. The first step is I want to make my divisor a whole number by moving my decimal point using place value. So right now it's in the hundredths place value. If I move it over 2 times, it now becomes 8 wholes. So if I move it a total of 2 place value spots, I'm going to do the same thing to my dividend inside of my bracket. 2 place value spots. 1, 2. So now that becomes 72 hundredths. The next step is my decimal point goes straight up to the top for my quotient. Now, I know that 8 cannot go into 7, so I'm going to put a 0 there. Now, I know 8 times something gives me 72. So this is where knowing your multiplication facts comes in really handy. So I know 8 times 10 is 80. So if I'm at 80 and I go back 8, that would be 9 groups of 8. 9 times 8 gives me 72. So it'd be 9 groups. 9 goes in my quotient up top. 9 times 8 is 72, and I have nothing left over. So now I want to make sure that my quotient, my answer here, is reasonable. Does it make sense? So I'm going to go back to the original question. How many nickels does Gabriel have? Gabriel has 9 nickels. So if each nickel is 8/100 and he has 9 of them, the height could be 72 hundredths. Is that reasonable? Yes, it is. That would make sense. Now, this is how you can also check where your decimal point goes. Because if my answer had the decimal point here and it was 9/10, that wouldn't sound right. That's not reasonable that he had 9/10 nickels. So I know something's not right there. So always double check when you're working with decimals and say, is my answer reasonable? All right, let's try question number 3. Heidi has $4.55. She needs to buy bolts at the hardware store. Bolts cost 13 cents each. All right, so first I want to think. I know that Heidi has a total of $4.55. I know she needs to buy bolts at the hardware store. Bolts cost 13 cents each. Okay, so each bolt is 13 cents, 13 cents, 13 cents. We need to figure out how many bolts she can actually buy with a total of $4.55. Part A. What division equation and related multiplication equation could Heidi use to find how many bolts she can buy? So it's asked me for two things: division equation and multiplication equation. So what's tricky about these problems is they all look so similar. Wow, this can be really overwhelming. What helps me when I have a problem like this is to actually just ignore it. I don't even look at the choices. What I do first is I go back to the top and I take what I know in the problem and I make an equation myself before I even look at the choices. So let's do that. All right. So I know that Heidi has a total of $4.55. She wants to buy bolts. Each one is 13 cents. All right. So this is what I know. So a lot of us would think of it like this. Blank groups of 13 cents would give us $4.55. Okay, so I need to figure out how many groups of 13 cents gives me $4.55. So you could think of it as multiplication, but for this lesson, we're going to look at it as division. So I want to know if this is the total and each one is 13 cents. I want to know how many she can buy. So how many groups of 13 cents can give me this? Okay, so let's solve it below. Now in this problem, it's not really asking you to solve it, but for our practice, we're going to solve it, and then we're going to link it to what it looks like as multiplication, put it all together at the end. All right, so $4.55 goes here, divided by 13 cents. Okay, let's practice the division. Do you remember what step one is? Making our divisor a whole number. 1, 2, lands here, 13 wholes. 1, 2, lands here, 455 wholes. Okay, now let's start the division. Can 13 go into 4? If I have 4 markers, can I make a group of 13? No, I cannot. So I'm going to put a 0 there. Can 13 go into 45? Yes, it can. Now, this year we worked a lot with multiple towers, especially when we have a 2-digit number, because it can be really, really tricky skip counting. So here, if I count by 13s, 13, circle it, 13 again, 26, 13 again, 39, 13 again, 52, oh, I went over. So the closest multiple of 13 is going to be 39. So if I take a look at that, how many times did I add 13 to give me 39? It took me 1, 2, 3 groups. So 3 groups of 13 gave us 39. 3 groups, 3 times 13 gave us 39. Careful, remember, sometimes we have to regroup inside of our division problem. I know I can't take 9 from 5, so I need to regroup. Now I have 15 minus 9. 15 minus 9 is going to give me 6. 3 minus 3 is going to give me 0. So now I have 65. All right. So now I need to figure out how many groups of 13 give me 65. So I knew that 13 times 3 gave us 39. So I can keep counting from there. Another 13 gave us 52. So that would be 4 groups. If I added 13 one more time, that would give us 65. So that would be 5 groups of 13 would give us the 65 that we need. So 13 goes into 65 5 times. 5 goes up here. 5 times 13 is 65. And again, your decimal point when you're dividing goes straight up to the top to the quotient. And the answer would be 35 wholes. Okay. Now, again, ask yourself, does that sound reasonable? Would that make sense? So again, I go back up to the problem, find out what it's asking me to do, what it's asking me to find out, and say, does my answer, my quotient, sound right? Does it make sense? How many bolts can she buy? She can buy 35 bolts. Yeah. That's reasonable. That sounds right. Again, if my decimal point was in the wrong spot, if it was 35 hundredths or 3 5/10, that wouldn't be reasonable. That would most likely mean that something was wrong. Usually it's the placement of the decimal point. Okay? All right, so here's my division equation. Now, for this problem, I need to figure out what my multiplication equation would be. Okay, so let's go through the answer choices. Let's eliminate the ones that don't make sense. I'm just going to write it a little neater. Okay, so this is our original equation. Okay, so let's go through and cross out the ones that don't make sense. All right, A, did we start with 13 hundredths? And would our answer be $4.55? Now, that does not match our problem. Our problem here is starting with $4.55. That would not match the situation in the problem. So I know that one does not make sense. I'm going to cross it out and get rid of it. Let's try B. Are we starting with 13 cents, 13 hundredths, and dividing it into $4.55? No, that one does not match. It does not match the situation above. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 says $4.55 divided by something gives us 13 cents. Now, the two numbers are correct, but the order is not, because we're trying to figure out how many total bolts she can buy. And if you look at the multiplication one down here, that would not make sense, because here in the bottom, if I multiplied 13 cents times $4.55, that's not going to give me the answer of how many bolts that she bought. Let's take a look over here. Part D. Ooh, that matches. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. The division one matches. Now down here, that represents what we talked about in the beginning of this problem. You need to figure out how many groups of 13 cents can give you a total of $4.55. So here, 13 cents times something is going to give us the total of $4.55. So yes, that does match. Think about fact families, inverse relationships. If I move the numbers around and represented my division with multiplication, D would be the one that works. D is correct. Now again, I know these problems are very, very tricky, and they all look very, very similar. So again, what I would do is start with the original problem, write your equation, You could solve it if that helps you. I like to always solve it just to know and understand the problem. And then think about it as multiplication. What does it look like with multiplication? And again, don't forget to always ask yourself, is my answer reasonable? Does it make sense? Go back to the question, reread it, and make sure that your decimal point is in the right spot. So that pretty much wraps up our lesson. Just remember, when you're dividing with decimals, make sure that your divisor is a whole number. If it's not, you're going to have to move the decimal point, and if you do, you also do it to your dividend. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I love hearing you. I've been getting pictures of math at home and board games and art projects and just some quick hellos. It's really nice to hear from you guys. I miss you all so much. Keep practicing. The more you practice, the better. And I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Keep doing your math. Bye for now.